reflections. So, guys, we cannot do this without asking the why, right? Because it's kind of cool to do these things. It could be interesting from a science point of view, but ultimately, what are the, if we are going to apply technology to humans, to ourselves, we need to have some solid answers to the why. So I want to share now with you some of the thoughts I've picked up over the last years from my many meetings and conversations here. Feel free to interrupt me with your thoughts and reflections throughout. So, but basically, if we take a long perspective of human history, a theme or a trend has been that we've gone from a world with very limited freedom and limited access to many, many things to ultimately giving ourselves increasing degrees of freedom in terms of access to education, in terms of human rights, in terms of access to health services, financial services, ability to travel, to influence the world around us. And I see human enhancement technologies as part of that spectrum. They will ultimately give us even greater freedom in terms of the information we can access, in terms of the healthier lives that we can live, because there will be this system that keeps an eye on my health. Just like modern cars have, they have a software that, there's a warning light when something is going wrong at the very early stage. So that is sort of the perspective I have on this. And the second perspective is that the human condition, the way that many people on this planet live today, unfortunately are not as good as we want it to be. We are still plagued by ill health, short lifespans, limited opportunities, etc. And for me, being a technologist and an entrepreneur is very much about not accepting the status quo. It's about saying, yes, we can make something better in this world, and we can improve the lives of billions of people if we really want to, because we can see the solutions for doing so. And a bit more specifically, if we look at human biology and our bodies and our psyches and our behaviors and our instincts, we know that they are shaped and built in a world, the last 200,000-300,000 years, when our species Homo sapiens evolved and became what we are today. We lived in a very, very different world than the one we inhabit today. We lived in small tribes, hunter-gatherers. We ate very different things. We met much fewer people. We had to protect ourselves from different kinds of threats. Starvation was always a problem, access to resources. And if you met a human that you hadn't met before, the best strategy was probably to treat them as an enemy, right? And hit them with the stone axe before they hit you. And now the world we live in today is so different in terms of we live in an age of information where you can find all this information about different people, that you need not fear someone just because you haven't met them before. We live in a world where we're totally used to interacting with strangers. You click on an app, there's a random gentleman that comes up with a car, and you get into that car and you just trust that person to take you somewhere else. It's fantastic. At the same time, yes, we live in an age of food abundance. So all throughout human history, starvation, surviving the winter was the real problem. But now, today, there are more people on this planet who suffer from having too many calories in their daily diet than there are people suffering from having too few. So the problem has shifted. And this, in my view, means that we humans are in some ways unfit for the world we are inhabiting now, and especially the one we're going to inhabit tomorrow, which will be even more extreme than the one we inhabit today compared to the one which shaped us. To give you a few fun examples, if you take a critical view, so to say, of the human body, there are very interesting things to see that, weaknesses in how we're made. For example, the fact we're the only mammal that walk on two legs all the time. So the skeleton we have is designed for walking on four legs. That's why everything from horses to cats to, and everything in between walk on four legs, because it's doesn't put so much pressure on the spine. But we humans at some point decided to walk upright. And in this setting, that's why we all have back problems sooner or later, because we're not designed for walking in this way. And it was a trade-off we had to do when we wanted to start using our two hands for different things. So if the animals in other animals in the animal kingdom that walk on two legs, such as large birds, or if you look at certain dinosaurs, they all compensate this bipedalism with having a huge tail, to put the limited pressure on the spine and not putting it completely vertical like we do. Another fun example, I think, is the teeth in our mouths, right? So if you look at these classic skeletons of chimpanzees and gorillas, and then the human skull, you can see that a feature of us is that our jaw bones are much tighter. And this is the reason why 9 out of 10 people have uneven teeth. It's because there's not enough room for the teeth, because our jaws have shrunk in as part of our evolution. Just a couple of fun illustrations, and there are many others. The design of the inner eye, or the vagus nerve, and other fun things that you can look at. But basically, the point I want to make is that there's a bunch of design improvements we can do to the human body, which are very evident. And perhaps most importantly, if we go beyond the individual health dimensions, okay, yes, these are the attributes of our bodies. More importantly is our cognitive and moral capacities, right? Because the biggest difference from our ancestors is not that we have more calories accessible, or we have more information accessible at touch of our fingertips, is that we now also have the technology to completely ruin the planet and kill everyone on board. And we are still ruled on this planet by people who have very primitive instincts. I don't need to name any names, because I think everyone who has been following the news can fill in the blanks themselves. But people who still look at neighboring people as someone who should be conquered and killed and driven from their land, and who don't see any consequences in throwing bombs at other people. And for me, as long as we are ruled by mentalities of xenophobia and racism and fear of others and tribalism and these things, we can never be safe, and we can never live in a harmonious world. And that's why I also think we must try to apply these technologies to improve ourselves ethically, morally, cognitively, and not just improve our basic health functions. I could pile up examples of this, and they may not be news to you at all, because you're an educated group of persons. But for example, the environmental destruction that we see, the short-sightedness of our thinking, of our economic systems, etc., is what's killing us, and what is making us ruin this one planet that we have. Another point I want to make is applying technology to the human body is something we've always done. Among the oldest bodies that we found, that are 4, 5, 6,000 years old in the Andes, or in the Egyptian mummies, or in frozen Siberian burial mounds that have been part of the permafrost, there is a pattern, interestingly enough, that all of these human cultures have used tattoos and body modification as ways of making themselves prettier, or giving themselves powers or magic of different kinds. And the point I want to make is that applying technology to ourselves, technology is what separates humans from the animals, right? They may use tools from time to time. A monkey can use a stick, but they don't use technology. They don't improve the stick. They don't reuse the stick and make it stronger, better in different ways. But that's what we do. And it's essentially human to apply these technologies also to improving ourselves, to making our bodies stronger, better, giving them magic powers and whatnot, right? I see it as an act of humanity. And of course, it's times we live in that we're all, whether we like it or not, the world our kids grow up in, we are all addicted and we are all integrated in our, in our thought processes, in our communications, in our dating lives, in our how we manage our finances and other resources. We all do this through technology already today to a significant extent. I don't know about any you guys, but I dream I dream about apps. I dream of Excel and PowerPoint, and it's both frightening and and an interesting observation that how these visual systems are part of our cognitive patterns in a completely integrated way. So coming to the finish line a little bit here, I want to give you 4 specific directions within human enhancement. So the first one being applying technology for curing disease and aging, for giving people not just longer lives, but as we like to say, not lifespans, but health spans. So allowing people to have health and being able to live active lives much, much longer than today. The second dimension is expanding perceptual abilities, improving our senses, giving us better eyesight, better hearing, completely new senses. A project I've been involved in for some years as an investor is to create a wearable device that allows you to feel the magnetic fields of the Earth, so that you can always know where is north and you can navigate by instinct. I mean, birds have these patterns, migratory birds. They can feel the magnetic fields of the planet. So why shouldn't we? And this is something that technology can give us. The third one is, of course, improving physical and cognitive abilities, giving us the ability to remember more things. I mean, these smartphones, they already serve in some ways as an exocortex, right? They keep our memories, they keep the images, they keep the contacts, they keep the information of the things we want to do, which we would in the old days have kept inside in this not that totally reliable memory system. So here we have great potential to also add new qualities to mankind. And then maybe I'm blocking the text, but the fourth and perhaps most interesting application of human enhancement is to improve moral and ethics of ourselves. And that is something that is urgently needed, perhaps more urgently than any of the other dimensions of human enhancement. I'm not going to read this, but I want to show you that there are some great thinkers who have been putting a lot of thought into this. What does it mean when we start augmenting ourselves with technology? There is, if you want to check it out online, there is this Cyborg Bill of Rights that outlines some very important principles, such as, for example, let's say everyone is wearing a smartphone equivalent implanted in themselves. Who would actually own that device? Would it be Apple that would own it, or do I own it because it sits in my body? And I'm firmly in the latter camp here. I also think that you cannot remove someone, a device from inside of someone without their explicit consent. You cannot update the firmware of a device that sits inside the body of someone without their full explicit consent, etc. So we need to work out these principles and how they work in practice as we're building this industry. In terms of philosophical perspectives, I want to bring up this. This is one of my most important hobby horses, and that is what the perspective that is most prevalent in both societal decision making and not least in medical and technology research is the precautionary system. Namely, let's be careful. If we're working with a complex system, we don't know exactly what the new thing we're trying to reduce is going to do. The number one principle must be to minimize harm. I mean, it's a strong principle, right? It's the precautionary principle. If we don't know, if we don't understand, it's better to say stop or no. But I want to make a special pledge for human enhancement technologies, because human enhancement technologies have such tremendous potential upside of what they can do for us if they can significantly expand human lifespan or enhance our sensory universe or dramatically improve our cognitive abilities. Then not doing these things is actually more risky, you can argue, than pursuing them. And that is what the philosopher Max More has coined as the proactionary principle. If the potential benefits are high enough, certain risks are worth taking and must be taken, because not pursuing them is actually a worse moral outcome than doing so. And I want to compare this with police officers or first responders who actually run towards the danger, who run to face the terrorists or run into a burning building, because they know what they do, they understand the risks, but they're willing to take them because of a bigger good for mankind. And I think that we need more of the proactionary thinking and the proactionary mindset and the proactionary principle when we look at human enhancement technologies. So, in a sentence, human enhancement is high risk, yes, to some extent, but more importantly, a very high reward investment if we pursue it. And to summarize, I think that, our story, as I start out this short session, has been one of liberation, right? We've liberated ourselves step by step from slavery and serfdom, women's rights, minority rights, the rights of people, the economic rights, access to being part of democratic decision making in different societies, etc. The historical trajectory is one of increasingly giving ourselves more freedom and power and agency. But there are still, in the age that we happen to be born in, two big prisons that limit our potential as individuals and as a species. And those two prisons are, number one, the gravity well of the planet we were born on, that makes it so hard and expensive for us to go beyond and to explore other heavenly bodies. And that simply we must break out of that prison. And the second one is, of course, the prison of these meat bags that we're born in, that, in their fragility and with all the flaws and of course beautiful things that these bodies give us in terms of sensory experiences and the eating a nice meal or sitting in the sunshine or taking a swim in the ocean and all these lovely things, that the experiences that our bodies allow us to do. But they also limit us in very, very profound way in their fragility and in their susceptibility to disease and their rapid aging. Yes, just as we're getting somewhat wise in life, then life is cut short for most of us, and I think that's an incredibly sad state of affairs. So we must also work to liberate ourselves from the prison of the meat bodies. The good news is that indeed we live in a time, we were privileged to be born in a time where we are truly breaking out. We see that different race to the stars is happening in our generation, and thanks to human augmentation technologies, we are breaking out of the stone. We like this classic statue, which is called Slave Breaking Out of Stone, and it is. We're learning that we can push the limits of these bodies made of meat in completely new ways, and we can experience completely new things. So I think in the present century that we are heading towards a completely different level of human diversity than the one we have seen so far, in a much, much bigger richness of human experiences and human choices and ability to define who we are as individuals and as groups and collectively. So we are heading towards a much, much richer human experience thanks to technology. And that makes me profoundly optimistic about the future, about all the beautiful things we are going to experience, all the insights that are still ahead of us that we will discover in the years to come. And the richness of the tapestry of mankind, which is the most awesome thing that exists in the universe, right? There is, thanks to humankind, the universe is conscious of itself, right? Stones, stars, satellites, asteroids, they're not conscious of their own existence, but we are, and thereby the universe is as well. So with that said, I think that we should not fear human enhancement. Quite the opposite. We should accept the fact that we are still just a seed. We're an acorn right now, who is just beginning to grow into a tree, and we're only at the very, very start of our potential as a species, as a civilization. So that was sort of my short message for today. If there's anyone who has thoughts or reflections or wants to comment on what's been said, I'm very happy to take the last 10 minutes here to engage with you.
No, I think that this second part was one of the best presentations we've ever had here in 10.5 years. So the obvious solution in the video production is that I'm going to make the second half part 1, and then the first half is part 2, the backstory, because people think the backstory, and then it starts with us talking about being at the SU executive program, and yeah, that's really good too. But so if you would allow me to mess with reality just a little tiny bit, make the second part 1, and then the first part 2, the backstory, then I think we'll have the perfect video production here.
No problem, Kim. I think also the graphics work better in the second part. So
sure.
We learn as we go along, and I trust you fundamentally to take my my input and process it in a way that makes it most useful for the audience that you know very well.
Yeah. But
I should also mention before I leave that if anyone wants to reach out to me, you can find me on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, or by way of this email. I'm quite easy to find online.
Yeah. Well, this has been a great presentation, and there are lots of insights. It's very appropriate for this course, and the medical students taking the course, I think will find this very inspiring too. And yeah, so it's really been ideal. The only thing that would have been better is if you were really here in Canada, and we'll make that happen, sometime
before you know
soon.
it.
Yeah. So I discovered something which you can see on my Instagram channel, which is just my name, Kim Soles. But I have pets at home, and they include African dwarf frogs. And if you think of what their life is like, what I used to think their life is like, and I was missing a big insight here, is that they're at the bottom of the tank, and they have to go up to get air every now and then. And we have a big tank, so it's a long way up. And then I realized, so now we have, for kind of accidental reasons, a very turbulent tank with, bubble production and like waves. Mm-hmm. And I realized the frog's body is made that in that circumstance, it basically is like weightless. It naturally goes to the top. It can stay there forever. the food also rises to the top. And now I've discovered this life of Riley, this absolute frog utopia, just by making the water more turbulent, that the frog can just stay on the top of the water and party all day.
I must ask you, Kim, as a doctor, I think we humans and frogs have that in common, that we share the same natural habitat, right? We want to be in the shore. We want to be in the breaking water.
Yes,
I mean,
yes.
When we're free, where do we want to go, right? Most people go to the beach. That's like our instinct draws us to that place, right? Where we have access to the shallow water and we can go in and out of water.
Right. But it's so uncanny. Like when I watch the frogs in this turbulent water, they don't have to exert any energy at all to get to the top. Just the waves themselves sort of propel them upwards. It's like the coolest thing. And so I think a lot of what you're describing is kind of like that. It's a discovery of how we can enhance the natural things that are already there and make our life much better. Yeah. And so yeah, I'm very excited about that. And also the philosophy in the second half of your presentation was very, very inspiring and similar to my own view of the world.
I think that is I'm aware that is the case, and there's a lot more to be seen there. I want to share one reading piece for people if you want to capture a very beautiful piece by, again, this philosopher Max More. He's called A Letter to Mother Nature.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a page, and it's written in the form of mankind writing a letter to Mother Nature and saying, hey, Mother Nature, by the way, say hello to Dad, we haven't seen him around. And saying that, Mother Nature, thank you for making us what we are, but now we have grown up and we can actually begin to take responsibility for ourselves and our evolution. And it's a lovely little read. So enjoy it.
I should tell you that Max Moore and I spent a lot of significant time together at a meeting in 2010. And it's when I tell you this, you'll say there can't be such a thing, but there is. It's the Mormon Transhumanist Society, and they had a meeting, and we spent a lot of quality time and very memorable time there.
No, the Mormon transhumanists are great.
Yeah,
I think they managed to combine making human enhancement again. It makes total sense with many of the Christian values. So
yeah.
It requires some strength to go beyond the basic sort of scriptural concepts, but it's a very interesting movement.
Yeah, it is, and it's so surprising. It's like people say you must have made that up. But no, it's quite real. So Max and I spent some very pleasant times together at that meeting. Okay, well, I won't keep you very long any longer.
Thank you, everyone, for joining. Thank you, Kim, for hosting. It's been a pleasure to connect.
Yeah, this has been.
You know where to find me if there's anything else, and anyone watching this video later, much pleasure.
Right. And there will be a face-to-face encounter on video in later this year or next year or sometime soon. Yeah. Hennis and I will make that happen. Okay, everybody. Thank you
very much.
Bye-bye now.
Good night and good day.
Okay.